working from home sucks. I'm just kidding. You guys really buy that? No, but in all seriousness, today we're going to talk about some of the pros and some of the cons of working from home and why it's such a heated debate in 2024. What's going on, guys? Thank you for clicking on this channel. What's going on, guys? Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm sure some of you are interested in more than just some dude talking about remote work. So if you're looking for more about data analysis, day-to-day life of a data analyst, or you just want some good entertainment, why don't you check out my channel below. All right, so I have been a data analyst now for a year and a half, and the last 6 months I've been working mostly from home. I go into the office about either once a week, but at minimum we go in twice a month. So I work the majority of my time at home. And I wanted to touch on this topic a little bit because it is a very heated debate about if people working from home is good or if it is bad for work. And obviously there are two big points of view differences, which is the point of view of the employee and the point of view of the company. Now, the biggest pro, which is one of the biggest things for employees, is that they're looking for flexibility in their life. One of the nice things about working from home is on my breaks, I can immediately go and do work around the house. I can film a YouTube video. I can do some extra studying. I'm already in a comfortable environment, an environment that I also spend a lot of my time in outside of work that I can directly affect and directly benefit immediately right there on the spot. Now, you can do this at work, but it's different. You're not going to be able to just do some dishes. You're not going to be able to eat lunch in your own environment. You can create a personal environment in your work environment, but it's not the same as being at home. And a lot of employees are looking for that. They want to be able to have that work-life ratio, and that is a big part of what they're looking for. Now, what comes with that is one of the biggest cons for companies, which is one of the things that they point out a lot, which is that there's a lot of distractions in a home environment. I can speak that personally. I forgot about my mic. I can speak about that personally, where I have a cat, I have a dog, I have a kid who run around and all they want to do is have fun and bother me. Now, one of the things that you can do to make sure that you aren't being distracted is to have an isolated place, like an office or a designated area that all distractions go out the window. Set aside your phone, set aside anything that is not work related, and make that your environment of being in the office. Think of it as your cubicle, your desk, whatever it is that you work at work, make that your spot at home. Make it an environment of work in a small section. That way you still have a clear divide of your work self and your personal self. Okay, so the next benefit that I want to talk about, which was a big one for me, was the financial aspect. So I was commuting every day, 25 to 30 minutes there, 25 to 30 minutes back. So it was significantly different in terms of how much money I was spending on gas when I was traveling to the office or I'm staying at home. And that does add up. You know, I'm still an entry-level data analyst, so every dollar counts. I'm not making the big bucks yet, so eventually when that's not quite an issue, that's fine, but for now, that was making a difference. Another thing was I was eating out a lot. I could pack and I could travel, but I was already having, an hour's worth of travel, and then with parking everything too, add another 20-30 minutes. And then, trying to get up early in the morning or stay up late at night. It always just seemed to be a hassle to try to pack. Not that it was an excuse, but just for convenience sake, I was eating out more. So that was another thing that I was able to cut back on since I've been working from home, is eating out. So just between those two, makes a bit of difference every month. And so that brings my cost of living down. Well, and from a corporate standpoint or from a company standpoint, the nice thing too is I'm saving money, which means I'm gaining money and they're not having to pay me out anymore. So it's a good benefit for companies too if they're not able to meet a certain requirement for someone's expenses or for someone's income coming in. So one of the biggest cons too, kind of touching a little bit on that first one about there being a lot of distractions, is that sometimes you do not separate your personal life and your work life. And some of that can be, where, like I said, if you're working on chores or you're doing So some of your hobbies during the time. Sometimes that gets crossed over, and some people will prioritize these other things outside of their work, and that is something that companies do not like, which rightfully so. When you're being paid to work, you're paid for production. You are supposed to be producing results for them on the time that they're paying you. And I think a lot of people have a hard time, designating those blocks of time out, or being a little too lenient with it. So I think one of the biggest things you have to do, and to make sure that you aren't blurring the lines between work and life, is to have hard deadlines. If you have a 10-minute break, make sure that if you're going to do something that's not work related within that 10-minute break, give yourself, if you can't do it in 5 minutes, don't do it. Because if you're doing, oh, I can do this in 8 or 9 minutes, then 8 or 9 minutes might become 12, 13, and then you're taken away from work. And that's something that is not okay for companies. So I think it's one of those things, whatever your time break is, like if you have an hour-long lunch, if you need to go run hobbies, if you can't get everything that you're trying to get done in 30 to 45 minutes on a perfect time, then maybe it's not your best work to do. Now, the final pro that I'm going to talk about, I think, is one of the ones that is a little bit, it's not the biggest pro, but it definitely is a pro, which is that you're in a comfortable environment. Not everyone is comfortable in an office space. Not everyone has, the same level of productivity when they're in an office setting. There's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure in the office for some people. And for some people, they do their best work when they're in a relaxed environment where they can listen to their music, where they can prop their feet up, where it's not necessarily office appropriate, relaxed behavior, but some people actually really do benefit from that, and their production goes up when they have less stress and anxiety over being looked at by their peers or being in an environment that is uncomfortable for them. For me, I'm not gonna lie, I don't have that too much. I actually do like the office setting a lot, but for me, one of the big things I do like is I like to listen to music when I work. It just kind of gets me into a zone where I can just focus, and it really helps me get through my productivity day a lot faster. And when you're in the office environment, you blend, 3 Days Grace and Nickelback and Breaking Bad is not exactly the play there. So when I get to be at home and I can just rock out, hey, it helps me. Might not be for everyone, but who knows. All right, and the last con, which is one of the things that I think is very important to take note of when you work from home, is that your social interaction significantly goes down. You kind of can get into this zone of that kind of deja vu where you're doing the same thing every day. And when you're by yourself, it almost becomes like I'm just plugged into the matrix. Or some people, I think they describe it as like being in a prison cell where it's just like, I have no interactions, I have no social connection with people. And one of the things that is controversial about that is because obviously one of the things that companies are looking for is to create an environment of success. And people know if you have a good team that feed off of each other in a social circle, that's what's going to really boost productivity. And sometimes that can be lost when people are working from home. And I think one of the best ways to combat that is to have, regular communication and regular get-togethers with your team, even if they are working from home, whether it's through Teams or doing video calls or conferences, something like that, where you can get your team to work together and to have interactions on a regular basis that, is not exactly the same as being person to person, but it still creates that continuity and that connection with people. So last thing that I want to touch on is just, in spite of the pros and in spite of the cons, like objectively, what do I feel about working from home? You have to be self-motivated to be someone who works from home. It requires a degree of monitorization of yourself because you're not going to have anyone monitoring you. So you have to keep yourself accountable. You have to keep yourself motivated. It is a blessing to be able to work from home. And I think one of the reasons why companies are cutting back on it is I think a lot of times what happens with blessings is that you forget it's a blessing, you take advantage of it, you lose sight of what a benefit is. And when that happens, your productivity drops, and then the company starts to second guess if it was worth doing it. And so that's why you saw a huge influx of companies bringing their people back in the office. I do think people kind of just get lost in that a little bit, that it became a little too regular for them, and they forgot that it is a blessing, it's a perk, it's not just an expectation of a company to give it to you. So I think the best way to make sure that doesn't happen is, like I said earlier, setting yourself into an area where you can close yourself off and make that your work environment. Be very upfront with your family and friends. Set boundaries as far as this is my time to work, this is my area to work. During this time, this is what I got to do. Outside of that, I can have a little flexibility. And then I also recommend this for anyone that is maybe considering working from home, but they're not really sure if they're the type of person that can do it or if it's really going to fit what they're looking for. What I did for my first month was I did more of a hybrid style. So I did 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, just to get a feel of, will I like being at home? Will I miss being in the office? And for me, after a month, I realized that the financial aspects and the environment aspect really was beneficial to me. And so that's when I decided to do almost completely remote. Like I said, we still have our mandates of coming in twice a month. And I do like to go in at least once a week if I can, because I do think it is important to have that connection with people one on one. So I meet regularly with my boss's boss, and even my boss's boss to make sure I keep, that one on one time with them in person, because I do think that is hard to replace when it comes to working from home. So that's just what I did, and I really am enjoying what I'm doing working from home. And I think that if you have the right job and you have the right personality and the right motivations, it is something that could be a huge blessing to you in your life. Well, I hope this video was helpful. If you guys want to see more about what it takes to be a data analyst, what it takes from working from home, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and help get this content out there.